15 years as a fire lookout. The sinister secrets revealed when night falls in our haunted tower. Joe stared into the darkness, aware that something sinister lurked just beyond the reach of his lantern's flickering light. 15 years of solitude in this tower, lost amidst the vast Pacific Northwest wilderness, had left him jaded and uneasy. Night after night, sounds of the forest morphed from calming whispers into restless shouts. Shadows danced menacingly, and age-old tales of malevolent spirits twisted around his mind like creeping vines. The vast expanse of trees once felt like a comforting blanket, but now, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they appeared like looming giants ready to swallow him whole. His heart raced as he scanned the tree line, where flickering lights seemed to wink at him from the shadows. Maybe a hiker, lost and seeking sanctuary? No, the way they danced, glimmering and vanishing, sent a cold shiver down his spine. The forest was alive, and it craved his fear. Joe shook his head, forcing himself to rationalize. Fatigue was playing tricks on him, that's all. But as the silence deepened, each crack of a twig felt like a warning bell tolling for him alone. Turning the radio dial, a burst of static filled the air, followed by a voice he recognized as Sheriff Collins. Panic seeped through the crackled transmission. Multiple disappearances. Gary. Innocuous lurking near last seen. Local townsfolk heeded warnings. Joe's breath caught. Gary, the guy who always had a smile and a helping hand for neighbors. What twisted secrets could he possess? Before we continue, Joe muttered under his breath, shaking off the dread momentarily. I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The chilling report punctured Joe's momentary escape as the dark reality clawed back at him. He was a soldier at this lookout, ready to protect his family, but shrouded by this isolation, it felt like a prison. He pictured Sarah and the kids, blissfully unaware of the horror brewing below. The forest seemed to hush, holding its breath as if anticipating his next move. Those lights, were they drawing closer, or was it his imagination? An electric jolt of fear surged through him. The ghost stories of lost hikers, children's whispers echoing from the depths of the woods. They all rolled back into his mind like thunderclouds pregnant with rain. What if these were not just shadows, but eyes watching and waiting? The warmth in his heart shifted to ice, a tight grip squeezing his throat. Just then, a deep rumble emanated from the dark, punctuated by a guttural growl that resonated through the air. The hairs on Joe's arms stood tall as he squinted into the inky abyss outside, feeling the suffocating weight of the night crushing in around him. His pulse quickened. The woods held secrets he wasn't ready to confront. Move or die, the darkness whispered. And as he peered into the inky black, he understood that this time, fear wasn't just a trick of the mind. Something was coming for him, and his family was still in the heart of that peril. Gripping the radio tighter, he thought of his next move. Would it be enough to fight back or escape the evil that had taken root in the woods? The shadows grew closer, twisting into shapes that blotted out the moonlight, and Joe realized he had to act fast. Time was melting away like snow under the weight of spring. Was he too late? Joe's breathing quickened as he quaked in the dim light of the lantern. Each pulse of its glow bounced off the tower walls, trembling like his resolve. The growl was gone, but lingering fear kicked at his gut. He stepped back, wrestling with the sense of impending doom. Was he truly alone? The rustling outside had stopped, and it sent a sharper fear crackling in the air. If whatever was out there didn't want him to see it, what horror was creeping toward him? Panic gnawed at his insides, wrapping around him like the vines in the forest. He turned his attention to the radio, trying to drown out the silence with static. Sheriff Collins, come in, he whispered, his voice trembling. No answer. His hand strayed toward the door, but the closer he got, the more dread pressed against his chest like a vice. Outside, the flickering lights appeared again, like fireflies at a midnight dance. But there was nothing innocent about them now. He squinted, half hoping for a familiar face, but all he saw was shadows. Too many, too twisted. A knot of fear clenched tighter. They weren't lost hikers. They were predators. Joe's heart thudded louder, reverberating against his ribs. He turned around, eyes wide, scanning the room like a trapped animal. As the darkness thickened, the shadows flickered, almost as if they were alive. "No," he uttered, shaking his head, pushing back against the delusions trying to overtake him. He shouldn't let fear dictate his next moves. He had a duty to protect his family. He couldn't fail them. He felt around the room, finally gripping the fire extinguisher tightly, its cold metal reassuring, as he stepped closer to the door. With a breath he didn't know he was holding, he thrust it open, wincing against the sudden rush of air that screamed into his face. The forest seemed to echo his heartbeat as he peered into its depths. The lights were gone, swallowed by the trees. That felt more unsettling than the presence of them. He took a tentative step outside, the wooden floor creaking beneath him, a relic of the years spent in isolation. "Hello?" His voice quivered, swallowed by the vastness. The response was an eerie silence, a stillness pregnant with possibility. It was as if the world held its breath, waiting for him to falter. Then he heard it, the soft crunching of leaves underfoot. Someone or something was watching him. He turned, every nerve ending alight. The tall pines swayed, breathing heavily against the wind, and for just a second, he could be sworn he saw a figure retreating into the thicket. Was it human, or something far worse? "Gary," Joe called, not knowing why he chose that name, hoping against all hopes that his former neighbor was still human. The only reply was silence. Fear escalated, tightening around him, and he stumbled back towards the tower. The door slammed shut with a resonating boom that echoed ominously into the forest. He leaned against it, panting, the barrier offering little comfort. Was there something more than a predator outside? Whatever it was, it wanted him. Joe's mind raced, calculating options, forcing himself to think through the fog of terror. He was running out of time. Glancing around, he noted the tools left for emergencies, the axe nearby. That inner voice whispered again, the one that had been rising since the report. Fight or run. Just as he reached for the axe, a tapping reverberated against the wall beside him, each sound a chilling reminder that he was not alone. A deep voice rumbled through the door, a contrived calmness that settled like heavy fog. "Joe, we're here. Come on out." His breath hitched. The voices were too many, too dissonant. Who was out there and what did they want? He stood frozen, the axe gripped tightly now. Would he step into that freezing darkness, or fight against the unknown that crept ever closer? The tapping resumed, more insistent now, each impact like a death knell in the suffocating silence. Joe's instincts screamed at him. Stay or flee. What choice could he make that might save him and his family? But before he could decide, he heard a child's laughter cutting through the tension, bright and hollow. The laughter echoed through the woods, drawing him in like moth to flame. It sent an icy dread coursing through his veins. "Dad! It's dark out here," the voice called. A chill spread over him. This voice was not his son's. It sounded wrong. Joe's grip tightened on the axe as the darkness pulsated around him, and for the first time, genuine confusion seized him. Who was really out there? "What do you want?" he shouted, adrenaline surging as he prepared for whatever was coming next. In that moment, a flicker of movement caught his eye. The shadows shifted once again, growing more distinct. He was unprepared for what came next. The door trembled on its hinges, threatening to buckle under the weight of Joe's mounting dread. Shadows crept closer, twisting and contorting where light dared not venture. He could hear the laughter still echoing, looping back on itself like a sinister song he wished he could unhear. "Just keep it together, Joe," he muttered, gripping the axe harder. Sweat beaded on his forehead, trickling down the side of his face. He scanned the perimeter of the tower, heart thundering in an erratic pulse. He should have bolted the door, barred it shut from the inside, but the flickering lights had beckoned him outside, drawn him like a moth. "Who are you?" he called, voice a frail whisper beneath the cacophony of his own heartbeat. There was no answer, only the silence that seemed to mock him, a living thing that grew thicker by the second. Panic threatened to burst forth. He could feel it clawing at his insides, begging for release. Then came a rustle, a nearly imperceptible sound that sent Joe's senses spiraling. He pivoted toward the noise, ready to swing the axe. He squinted into the shadows, straining to see. Was it a trick of the mind, another manifestation of his fears? Or was something truly out there, waiting, watching? A figure slipped into view, moving stealthily, deliberately. A child's silhouette framed under the canopy of trees. Confirmation of his darkest fear flooded his veins. "Get away!" he roared like a primal instinct clawing its way to the surface. The child twitched, jerking back, then suddenly vanished into the surrounding darkness. His stomach lurched. Was that his son? Panic blasted through him like flames through dry tinder. He could hear his boyish laugh again, a lilting sound that twisted into a cruel taunt. "Dad, help me!" The unmistakable plea, high-pitched and innocent yet laced with a sinister undertone that sent him reeling. Joe's eyes darted, scanning for any sign of life, any hint of comfort. The lantern flickered in warning, casting long, curling shadows that seemed to slink away from him. He took a step back, drawn into the numbing embrace of fear. This can't be happening. Behind him, the door rattled again with sinister urgency. The voices outside, still disjointed, unrecognizable, grew louder. "Come out, Joe, we just want to talk." Clamoring voices wrapped around him, thick, like weeds choking the air. He couldn't let them in. Not now. Not ever. But did he really think he could hole up in the tower forever? Breath hitching in his throat, Joe turned to the window, searching for refuge, anything that could provide a way out. He spotted the emergency exit, a rusty ladder leading down into the unknown. The shadows pressed closer, whispering promises of horror that made him sick to his stomach. He had to decide. Climb down that cursed ladder or confront the entities lurking at his door. He felt the weight of the axe, its cold steel a reminder of his fight for survival. The growling returned, low and guttural, reverberating through the wooden walls. It echoed the panic in his chest, a warning that crushed his resolve. The shadows danced violently against the flickering light, and Joe knew he could either fall into that dark abyss or face whatever horror awaited him with a shuddering breath. He pushed the door open just a crack, the rusted hinges screeching loudly enough to awaken the dead. The chaos of voices rushed in like a tide, and a wave of icy wind swept over him, chilling his bones. Outside, a pair of glowing eyes locked onto his, a predatory gaze cloaked in the night. "Joe, join us," they purred, the chorus of murmurs wrapping around him like a noose. Was it real, or another crippling hallucination designed to break him? "Dad, help!" The laughter had twisted into something worse, now a lure to an unseen danger. The light inside flickered again, plunging him into a world of darkness, and the shadows beckoned. He was out of time. Joe blinked, fighting his sinking dread. A choice loomed ahead, sharp and inevitable. Whether to descend into the oak-laden underworld or face the twisted truth of what had come to claim him. As the night air thickened with malice and voices rose to a fever pitch, a chilling question hung in the darkness. What if the shadows held his family captive, transforming them into something he could never hope to understand? Joe's next move could be the last he ever made. The door flew open with a deafening crash, its age-worn hinges protesting violently. Joe barely had time to react as a wave of frigid air surged inside, enveloping him like a shroud. Shadows poured in, skittering across the uneven wooden floor, intertwining with the malignant whispers that clawed at his sanity. Joe let us in. The voices were seductive, slippery like oil. Each syllable slid through his ears, curling around his thoughts. He could picture them, figures reaching out from the darkness, fingers elongated and grasping. His grip tightened on the axe, a futile weapon against the phantoms calling his name. "Stay back," he shouted, but his voice was small, drowned in the mounting terror. The moonlight crested the trees outside, illuminating the space just enough for him to catch glimpses of the crawling shapes. Ghostly forms flitted just beyond his reach, dark shapes shifting, faces contorted into smiles that didn't belong. "Joe, it's your fault you let them take us." The echoes of his son's laughter morphed into shrieks of agony, drowning out the inviting chorus. Each sound dug into his mind like a serrated knife. He took a step back, his foot slipping on the dust-slick floorboards. This wasn't right. In this tower, he'd been alone, but now the loneliness was suffocating, replaced by phantoms he couldn't understand. The skies darkened above him, and a rumble of thunder resonated, shaking the very foundation of the tower. The lantern flickered again, its glow dwindling. Panic surged like a tidal wave. What if the whispers were right? What if he had failed his family, the shadows manipulating him? He had to do something. He had to find a way to break free. Joe forced himself to breathe, frigid air searing his lungs. The chill pressed closer, tendrils curling around his psyche, whispering deep-seated fears. They taunted him with memories the last time he saw their faces, the last memories he could clutch before they faded into shadow. "Enough!" he bellowed, swinging the axe wildly toward the door as if he could cleave it open to reveal the truth. The echoes of his strikes rang hollow, meeting laughter that soared high, mocking, spiraling above. The voices morphed, clashing with the gales rattling the tower. "Dad, save us!" He stumbled back, a whirlwind of emotions churning within. It was a cruel imitation. But even if it was a trick, each deviant pitch drew him deeper. Could they truly be trapped? He strained his ears, trying to decipher the chaotic murmurs overlapping each other. Just then, a sharp crack erupted outside. The ground trembled beneath him. Joe whipped around to see branches snapping ominously from the trees, huge silhouettes moving within. They seemed to sway, beckoning him with grotesque gestures, threatening to consume everything he loved. A horrible thought flashed through his mind. What if he was already too late? What if he stepped outside, only to find nothing but void? A distant glowing figure reemerged, its form indistinct yet alluring. "Join us, Joe, we need you," it implored, twisting his heart in knots. He took a trembling step toward the promise of illumination, his mind a battlefield of light and darkness. The weight of his choices pressed down. Then the shadows twisted, snapping him back to reality. "No!" he screamed as he fought against the pull. Still, the voices pressed in, closing the distance between hope and despair. Suddenly, a resonant thud shattered the moment, a sound reverberating from beneath the tower. It shook him to his core. Dread filled his veins. What other horrors were waiting below? The ground trembled again. Something was trying to break through. It wasn't just the shadows outside. What if something was rising up? Something far worse than imagined. Joe stood at the crossroads, a choice again laid before him. Succumb to the deceptive glow of his son's face, or confront the unspeakable terror lurking just beneath his feet. But as the howling winds filled the night, he realized each option could be a death sentence. Could he uncover the malevolent truth, or would he watch in despair as the shadows swallowed everything he held dear? The thudding grew louder, reverberating through the wooden beams like a heartbeat, a slow, relentless pulse that beckoned Joe closer. Whatever lay beneath him was more than shadows. It was alive. The memories of laughter turned into choked cries echoed in his ears, mixing with the growing noise beneath his feet like an unholy symphony of dread. "Help! Please!" The voice hit him like a cold slap, distinct and sharp. It was his son's voice, but it twisted into a strange, pleading pitch that ignited a firestorm of panic in his chest. He tightened his fingers around the axe, knuckles white, his heart racing against the impending claustrophobia of the tower. He turned to the door, the path out, the promise of the world beyond. But the glowing figure lingered like a siren, drawing him in, coaxing him with its otherworldly light. "You can save them, Joe," it whispered, melodious yet laced with decay. The thought pierced through the fog of confusion. "They're gone," he shouted back with an urgency desperate to drown the seduction of hope. He took one step back, then another. But the ground quaked again, this time with a violence that rattled the frame of the tower. He stumbled, the lantern swinging wildly, casting obscured shapes that danced chaotically around him. Shadows flared dramatically, and then he noticed them. Eyes glittering, watching from the ruptured floorboards. A vast, unknown presence was clawing to get free. Joe, the voices moaned again, the flimsy barrier of reality stretching to its limits. Were the shadows alive? Were they some manifestation of his guilt? Each thought tumbled through his mind, threatening to drown him further. "Stop!" he screamed, swinging the axe down at the floorboards with a primal scream, hoping to silence the ghostly whispers. The impact sent splinters flying, but the creature below only growled in response. Relentless in its desire to it was the very essence of malevolence, rising, gathering strength. Joe could feel the air crackle with energy, thick and suffocating, as the gaping maw of darkness beneath threatened to swallow him whole. Then, as if boiling over with rage, the ground erupted. A mass of shadowy tendrils burst forth, writhing, twisting in a grotesque parody of limbs. Joe stumbled back, shock rippling through him, his breath coming fast. The lantern flickered and died, plunging him into an impenetrable darkness that felt sentient. Aware, he could feel the cold fingers of the shadow reaching for him, drawing near. The air thickened with desperation and despair, the very walls of the tower seeming to close in. "Joe, come home," they taunted. The familiar tone laced with a chilling mockery. He backed away, heart hammering against his ribs. He fumbled in his pocket for anything that could offer hope. The ground quaked again, angered, disturbed by his presence. His foot slipped, and he fell, the cold grasp of the shadows tightening around his ankle like iron shackles. Please, it wasn't just a plea for help. It was a desperate call to action. Somehow, right there in the darkness, he felt the nagging pull of his family lost, yet yearning. Joe gritted his teeth against the fear clawing at his mind. He was fighting for their souls, against shadows, against whispers, against this darkness that threatened to consume him. Gritting his teeth, he swung the axe again, aiming for the heart of the dark mass. If this was the source, it had to be cut. But with every swing, more tendrils rose up, fiercely resisting, as if they were a living force manifesting from his deepest regrets. "Let go," he bellowed, fury igniting along with the pulse of his heart. He struck again and again, the echoing blows a desperate prayer. The night roared in response, fury unleashed against his defiance. And then, there it was, a blinding light bursting forth from the heart of the shadows, as if his own will had struck a match in the night. But was this salvation, or just another form of deception? As the light erupted, Joe watched in horror, fear clawing at his mind once more. Whatever truth was about to be revealed left him, trembling, teetering on the brink of madness. Could he wrestle the truth from the maw of darkness, this relentless force that had taken everything from him? And as the light grew, illuminating the silhouettes of all he had lost, he realized he was about to face the consequences of a choice made long ago. What awaited him in that blinding burst? Would it be resolution, or the final descent into despair? The light burned, stark and unyielding, filling the tower with an unnatural brightness that felt like a blade of hope stabbing through despair. Shadows recoiled, shrieking as if they were alive and desperate to cling to the dark. But Joe, wide-eyed and trembling, couldn't see how his family could be trapped in that blinding glow. "Why?" he gasped, the word a mere whisper, swallowed by the weight of dread. His heart pounded out a frantic rhythm, alternating between fear and a spark of recklessness. It was as if the shadows were trying to drown him in memories he couldn't bear. Suddenly, from the depths of the swirling light, a figure emerged, vague at first, then sharpening like a knife. A hand stretched out, slender and familiar, fingers curling as they reached for him. The face that followed was one he hadn't seen in years. Tears pricked at the edges of his eyes. "Mom?" Before he could take a step, the darkness surged back, tendrils snapping up like serpents, swallowing the light whole. Joe roared, swinging the axe once more, desperate to fend off the encroaching shadows. Every strike echoed around him, an unholy chant punctuating his resolve to break free. "Mom!" he screamed again, slicing through the blackness. "Joe, you need to listen," the figure in the light cried, voice tinged with urgency. The world spun around him, and the tendrils traced his skin with whispers that beckoned to his guilt, stirring long-buried regrets. He could feel the darkness wrapping around his heart, squeezing, granting him fleeting glimpses of the past, his son's laughter, the scent of his daughter's hair, the warmth of family dinners. Each vision cut deeper, sharpening despair's grip. But he couldn't cave now, not when he was so close. He raised the axe high and swung with ferocity, feeling the shadows shrink away. The cries of his family resonated with each swing, a rallying cry merging their voices with his own. He was breaking through, but at what cost? "Joe, don't let it take you." His mother's voice broke through the chaos, panic lacing her words. The shadows writhed, murmuring secrets of pain, of loss, of choices made. "Feeds on your fear. Your grief. Fight it." Tendrils lashed out, tightening around his wrists, pulling him back. Joe felt the ice grip of surrender tugging at him, twisting the memories of his failures into weapons, his cowardice in leaving, his inability to save them. "No!" he roared, tearing free. He slammed the axe downward again, feeling the rush of power as a chant of resolve rose from within. But the light flickered, dimming as the shadows fought back. He could see their grotesque forms taking shape, faces of those lost, twisted in agony. The very essence of his regrets clawed back, pulling him toward the very depths he sought to escape. "I will save you," Joe howled, determination fueling his swings. But as he fought the darkness, he felt the uncertainty gnawing at him. Was he fighting for them or for himself? A cold grip of doubt wrapped around his throat, choking his resolve. "Joe!" The figure in the light faded, voice turning to a wail. "Don't let them win." The shadows surged. All at once, a cacophony erupted, voices echoing through the tower. Grief melded with anger and fear, wrapping around him, squeezing the breath from his lungs. The last tremors of light sputtered, a final gasp against an avalanche of darkness, a monstrous claw reaching for him, hungering, yearning to pull him down into eternal night. And then came the stillness. The shadows halted, waiting, a silence that screamed louder than anything he had faced. Joe felt the weight of their eyes, piercing him, rooting him to the ground. "What will you choose, Joe?" The whisper was both familiar and alien. "Save them or save yourself." In the depths of that suffocating quiet, the answer formed like bile in his throat, bitter, choking. What choice would he make? He could still feel the pull of the past, but the darkness hungered. It was relentless. This moment stretched into eternity, shadows pulsing like disembodied hearts. Would he find the strength to tear the veil or surrender to the depth of despair? The axe trembled in his hands, poised between decision and destruction. Whispers of both hope and horror wove through his thoughts, binding him to the tower as fate. As he stood on the precipice of choice, the shadows coiled tighter, waiting for the flip of his final decision. In that moment, he realized the true horror lay not in what he faced, but in the choice he had yet to make. Could he uncover the truth buried in the darkness? Or would he fall victim to the very shadows he yearned to banish once and for all? The shadows pulsed around him, flaring as if waiting for his answer. Joe stood at the edge, torn between two worlds, a father grasping for lost love, and a man confronting the abyss of his own failures. Each heartbeat dueling against the silence. The weight of the decision began to thrum in his chest. "Mom!" The name escaped him one last time, his voice cracking like glass under pressure. But the figure flickered once more, her features twisting into a grimace, torn between light and dark. He could see the shadows reach for her with slimy fingers, grasping at her translucent form. Desperation washed over him. "Choose," they hissed, voices melding into 1,000 anguished cries. The axe felt heavy, like a curse as he clutched it tighter. One moment to save everything, one moment to lose it all. With a wild swing, he severed a tendril that coiled around his ankle, the darkness snapping back as if stung. He stepped forward, toward the light, toward his mother as he advanced. The air around him thickened, pressing down like a massive weight. The swirling glow shrunk, dimming, revealing the faces trapped within the shadows, faces of those lost to him. A sudden scream rippled through him, his heart racing, teeth gritted against memories clawing for freedom. "No!" he yelled, not backing down but pushing forward instead, toward that light. Each step resonated like thunder, breaking the oppressive silence that held him captive. With every swing of the axe, the darkness receded. He could hear laughter now beneath the horror, his son's giggles, the soft chime of his daughter's voice. "Joey, come play," echoed a distant call, pulling him in. But a terrible twist of anguish warped the memories, morphing joy into screams, the laughter into cries for help. Fear wrapped around his spine like ice as he swung again, and a wall of shadows dissolved, revealing a path through the torment. The way forward flickered, twisting like a mirage. Was it real? Could he trust it? "Stay with us," the whisper wound through his mind, soaking his resolve with doubt. Images flashed his family, warm smiles, cozy dinners turning malignant, ghosts lurking behind every smile. The tower began to shift around him, and he felt it, a pulsing heartbeat beneath his feet, a low rumble of anger directed at him. Joe sprinted, the axe a beacon, cutting through the dread, determination burning within him. The shadows lashed out, but they whirled and twirled, chaotic, desperate to keep him away from the light. They whispered sweet lies in the face of his fury, lacing around him, tempting him with the warmth of his family, like a trap. "Joe, it's never too late," the moment stretched on, dark tendrils reaching out. Each tendril felt cold against his skin, a biting chill that radiated sorrow and loss. He could see their faces, a collage of despair and grief, each trying to pull him back into the darkness that gnawed at his memories, twisting his essence. "Mom!" he called again, voice trembling, filling the void with fright and desperation. "Tell me what to do." The light flickered, and for a breath, he saw her clear and strong, her expression softening, pure love shining through. "Fight, Joe. You are stronger than this." Strength surged through him, igniting a fire that fought against the icy grip of despair. He swung the axe one final time, and the shadows shrieked, contorting sharply as light burst forth, bright and stark. But then a twist, a surge of darkness slammed into him, toppling his balance. Joe stumbled back, breathless, fighting being enveloped into the dark. "What?" he mouthed, panic blooming as the shadows crept up his legs, dragging him down. As he descended, he could hear muted screams. Were they his, or those he loved? His grip faltered around the axe, and the shadows surged. His last recollection of his mother's face blurred and flickered in agony, her final plea swallowed by the darkness. "Joe!" The voices cried out in unison. But he was falling now, beyond the point of reason. The weight was suffocating, dragging him deep until he plummeted into darkness. "This isn't the end," he thought, spooning his will against the tide, struggling against the void beneath him. But what would free him? As he fought the spiraling collapse, he sensed something, an icy tendril, pulling at him with a force that felt different. It whispered as it tightened, promising him the answers he sought, deep-buried truths of who he was and what he had done. "Embrace your memories, Joe, and understand the cost." And just like that, he realized. What awaited him below was not merely the end, but a revelation, a truth darker than the shadows themselves. Could he resist? Or would he succumb to the shadow's embrace, drowning in the depths of what it would reveal? A new horror awaited him, one he had summoned with his own choices. Joe's world spun in a chaotic swirl as the shadows pulled him deeper. The icy tendril wrapped tighter, its touch sending a jolt down his spine, cold, yet alluringly warm. This voice was different, seductive like the sirens of old. It promised clarity, a way through the anguish that thickened the air around him. "What is it you truly desire?" it whispered, casting long echoes through his fading consciousness. Answers he barely managed to reply, the word tasting like despair on his tongue. "I just want the truth." In an instant he was submerged in memories. Vivid colors dripped from his mind, forming images too disturbing to forget. He saw himself as a child, running through fields of swaying grass, laughter spilling from his lips. Then it twisted, the laughter morphing into shrill wails, blood-soaked grass underfoot where innocence once thrived. Shadows slithered around him like hungry serpents. Remember who you are, Joe. The boy, the father, the monster, the voice urged, growing stronger, a cacophony of past actions closing in. He winced at the weight of those labels, each one digging into him like thorns. The joy of family, transformable into loss. The pride of fatherhood, stained with neglect. He fought to maintain his grip on the axe, yet every recollection clawed at his heart. How could someone so lost reclaim their sense of self? Look closer, it pushed as images shifted again, forging into darker chapters. Flicking back to the night of the fire, the day he abandoned his post, left the tower to chase after the glimmers of laughter, only to return to the ash and embers of his home. He could see them. His wife stood at the door, fear etched across her face. "Where were you, Joe?" She screamed into the howling wind. A painful memory of pleading eyes, a haunting question left unanswered. And then, in the ashes, those charred faces whispering, taunting him from the abyss. That longing twisted, a crude knot in his throat. "Do you want salvation?" The voice hissed, pulling him deeper still. "Are you prepared to pay the price?" Panic surged through him like wildfire. What would it cost? Joe didn't want to become the thing that hunted him, clinging to the edges of his memory. He wanted redemption, but he was too close to the edge. Shadows surged at the corners of his vision, mocking him. "Joe, let us go," shouted a specter, a figure garbed in sorrow, swirling around remnants of his life. His mother's voice echoed, a fragment of light in the endless dark. "You are more than this." Before he could hold onto that glimmer, the darkness lunged, dragging him down, deeper into memories and regrets. The ground below began to hum with power. Suddenly, images of him as a firefighter surfaced. His team, his comrades' laughter echoing in camaraderie back at the station, contrastingly warm in that chilly grip of dread. But there among them stood the ghost of a fallen brother, a reminder of a mistake left dangling. "Your choices, Joe. They haunt you. Please, I need to stop this," he grunted, his hands straining against the icy grip, heart thundering as the weight of every lost chance pressed down on him. "Embrace it," the voice commanded, its seduction unfaltering. "Only then can you break free." With a surge of defiance, he roared, "I will not be defined by my past." Yet even as he shouted, shadows danced tighter around him, blurring his vision, constricting his breath. He felt the axe slipping, the darkness thickening. And then, the whispers crescendoed, tearing through his resolve, revealing something more terrible than he could have imagined. An undeniable truth bore down upon him, and suddenly he understood. He had a choice, and that choice would change everything. Joe beckoned, a voice, so familiar it broke him. "You can save us," but could he? Would he plunge into the depths of dark knowledge, risk all to rewrite his fate? As the weight pressed him down, the shadows swirling into a vortex of terror, one question echoed louder than the rest. What would he become if he gave in? And in that moment, the abyss blinked back at him, ready to unveil secrets that lay just beyond the edge of reason. The question lingered like a whisper. Which truth would he choose to uncover? The ground trembled beneath Joe as the shadows whipped violently, swirling with a malevolence that clawed at his sanity. A sickening rush of dread flooded his senses, walls tightened, air grew stale, and he could hear his heartbeat thrumming like warning drums in the distance. "Embrace it to break free," that taunting whisper slithered around him again, curling like smoke through his thoughts, each word igniting a fiery uncertainty. Could this really be the path to redemption, or a trap set to ensnare him even deeper into darkness? His hands were cold and clammy around the axe's handle. He steadied himself against the looming threat, desperately searching for clarity. The memories, once piercing him like thorns, became a faceless tide, crashing against his will to resist. "Choose, Joe," the voice urged, fluid and enticing. Would you rather dwell in despair or unlock the knowledge that lurks in the depths? Images flickered. His childish laughter morphed into cries for help, echoing off the walls of the past. Each chirp transformed into a scream as he grabbed harder for the axe, knuckles bleeding white. He had to break free of this cycle, the ghostly chants layering upon one another. A symphony of horrors he thought he'd left behind, then silence. The shadows parted abruptly, revealing a path lined with flickering memories like streetlights in an abandoned city. His own voice whispered back at him. What happened that night? What really went on in your tower? Joe stumbled forward, mouth dry, each step feeling heavier. Maybe the answers awaited him in the depths of that inky night. But as he walked, a chilling realization crept over him. What if the truth would destroy him instead? What if his desire for understanding led him to lose everything? Yet again. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught the corner of his eye. He turned sharply, the hairs on the back of his neck standing at attention. A shape, vague and amorphous, darted among the shadows. For a moment, a glimpse of a face flitted past his memory, a face he recognized, but couldn't place. The air grew thick, swirling with tension. Joe's breath quickened. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice cracking with uncertainty. Silence answered him, then laughter. Echoing, mocking laughter that rattled his bones like a distant storm. "Joe, don't you remember?" The voice echoed again, crystalline and sharp, like ice shattering. "You never left." He felt a deep chill pool within him, black as night. Memories flooded back, the whispers of long-dead comrades, the eyes of his estranged family, all watching from the shadows, grinning as they held onto remnants of their own pain. The axe trembled in his grip, as if responding to the tortured spirits around him. "No," he bellowed, a rush of defiance surfacing. "You're not real. I left you." The innocent laughter turned grotesque, morphing into a cacophony, shrieking, howling, clawing at his sanity, dragging him further down into the depths of despair. The axe fell from his grip, clattering lifelessly against the floor. "You wanted the truth, didn't you?" The voice taunted, rising in volume. "You wanted to remember." The world began to spin again, faster this time, images blurring and stretching like a funhouse mirror. Joe clutched his head, the weight of the knowledge crashing over him as fragments of lost time shattered into clarity. He staggered backward, heart racing. The truth was out there, but did he dare confront it? He took a deep breath, fueled by a primal instinct to survive against the overwhelming terror. The shadows loomed, swirling ever closer. "What have I become?" he muttered, choking on despair as he readied himself to step deeper into the unknown. And with that determination, he felt a flicker of something new, a strange resolve igniting a fire he thought long extinguished. But would that be enough to face the ultimate revelation lurking at the core of his haunted existence? As the darkness beckoned him deeper, Joe felt his heart pound in rhythm with the heartbeat of the tower itself. What lay ahead in the rubble of his memory was still a mystery. But one thing was certain. He'd find answers, even if those answers led him to hell itself. And perhaps it wouldn't just be his own past waiting for him at the end. The ground beneath Joe heaved violently, shaking him from the echoes of his memories. With every pulse, shadows writhed and twisted around him, hungry and angry, yearning to draw him into their dark embrace. He couldn't let them in. Not now. Not ever again. That he felt the weight of the axe against his palm, cold and promising. In that moment he chose, not solely for himself, but for those lost to the night, the faces twisted in agony behind the shadows. With renewed determination, he swallowed down the panic clawing at his throat and turned towards the abyss. He would confront the truth no matter how agonizing. "Show yourself," he shouted, his voice deep and fierce, cutting through the clamor swirling in his mind. The tendrils brightened, coiling back momentarily, revealing more and diverting the menacing laughter. Desperation turned to stagnant suspense, and from the shifting darkness, a figure emerged, a faint luminosity flickering with long-lost familiarity. "Joe," it called, voice soft yet echoing through the shadows like a bell. You need to understand what? He barked, the fight pulsing fiercely in his veins. What else is there to see? I lost everything. The figure stepped forward, regaining form a woman, with sorrowful eyes that bore into his soul. I am part of you, Joe. The decisions we made together, the moments we shared. I came to find you know, he cried, shaking his head violently, memories rushing back. You're a trick, a puppet of this darkness. Yet, even as he spoke, the guilt burned bright in his chest, and he could see her, your own mother, love and regret layered in her gaze. Your past won't disappear, she urged gently, softening the shadows that had encased him. You need to acknowledge every piece of it. Embrace the weight, then see what is beyond. No, I can't. His voice cracked, terror igniting into desperation. Remember why you're here, she urged. To save those you love, to face your own darkness. You feared facing the truth because the pain resides there, Joe. But true strength is found in acceptance. The shadows stirred. The voices now rose in confusion, their hold slipping slightly. For every word she spoke, a shard of fear melted away. Joe clenched the axe tighter, memories of laughter, warmth, and happiness sorting through the tumult, fighting against the sorrow of loss pressing him deeper into the chaos. He could feel the warmth wrapping around him, softening the cold truths he had buried. Can't let you fade again. I won't give in, he vowed. He stepped closer, confronting the face of the shadows, the collective torment of regret and loss. You do not control me, he shouted, raising the axe and preparing to swing with his next swing. He felt the surge, he could hear the echoes of laughter transform into cries of despair before breaking apart into light. The darkness shrieked, a sound like 1,000 tortured souls screaming for reprieve. He swung again, determination igniting within him like a wildfire. Every swing became a proclamation of love, a loving plea tangled with grief. I will save them. I will break this curse. In that blinding light, figures began to emerge, lost souls shimmering back into existence. His family faded, outlines of laughter and tears wrapping around him like ethereal tendrils, guiding him beyond the shadows. Hold on, Dad. His son's voice called out, shimmering against the raw edges of darkness. Don't let them take you. He swung repeatedly, the binds of shadow dissolving under each connection. The darkness screamed in agony, and with a final resounding echo, he severed the grip of despair. Light burst forth in a glorious explosion, tearing apart the world's grasp on the shadows that had taunted him for so long. The ground shook violently, and the figures began emerging in clarity, transformed from the twisted faces of lost dreams to the ever-familiar comfort of family. There, amidst the fading darkness, his son and daughter stood, smiles bright as if woven from starlight. Joe, his mother's spirit whispered softly, pride shining through her ethereal form. You've broken free. He gazed around him, overwhelmed by love, understanding, and acceptance. This was what he fought for, their laughter mingled with life enveloping him, an unwavering force against the pain of memory. Dad, we're here. His daughter shouted joyfully, pure elation radiating through the still night air. Tears streamed down Joe's cheeks as light surrounded them, washing away every black tendril of doubt. He stepped forward, welcomed into their embrace. I'm so sorry, he whispered, guilt still lingering but finally beginning to evaporate in the warmth of their love. As the shadows receded, peace filled the space where dread had once reigned. Understanding coursed through him, a realization that strength derived from facing pain and acknowledging love. Together, they stood, hands entwined against the yawning void, no longer entrapped by the malevolence of regret. The truth had swept through like the dawn, revealing freedom born from pain, love woven through every dark memory. And Joe knew with certainty that he would carry them in his heart forever. His fight never alone. He took a breath deep into his lungs. He was free. The forest whispered softly. The stars flickered above. The tower now stood not just as a lookout, but a place of healing, a reminder that every battle faced made way for the light of dawn. Thank you for being part of this journey. If you want to dive into more chilling tales and emotional roller coasters, Remember to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep these stories alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's grow this community together.